to our Saturday meetings now, as we have been doing for a couple of weeks now online. And today we have here our friend Adriano Barbo, who will be conducting tonight's meeting, talking about the Spiritist view of Easter. Since we are approaching Easter, yesterday was Good Friday, and tomorrow Easter, we came to the consensus of trying to understand a little bit more what is this Spiritist view of Easter. Not only to include ourselves in this amazing gathering that many people partake tomorrow, but also to understand where we are and how we can best fit in with the rest of the world and the Christian society in the world. Before we pass the word to Adriano, we would like to read a passage of the book Happy Life, and we will pray together, and then we'll pass the word to him. The message from the book is on page 165. Forgive me for the chapter. I can't tell you right now. I'll tell you later. I'll share this later with everyone. But Joana de Angelis says, whatever social relationships you maintain, the situations that will take your measure always take you by surprise and find you alone. Friends, companions can share our pain, but your pain will always be your own personal cross, nor could it be any different. Supported by divine justice, every man pays back according to his debt and grows in conformance with the situation where he erred. Equip yourself with peace and prepare yourself for the inevitable ascension that is required of you. Very pertinent to what we're going to be discussing tonight. And for all of us to settle down, we invite you to please find a comfortable position so we can pray together, so we can acknowledge our presence here together through the web, acknowledge one brother, every brother and every sister who's going to be following us now as well as in the future. It's important that we remind one another, as we have been saying through these meetings, that we understand that this is really an important moment of our lives, because we can bring the same environment that we create at the Spiritist of Baltimore or wherever we are praying to our homes. So try not to allow yourself into any distraction, anything that it will call your attention from the meeting, and truly pay attention to what we will say now during the prayer, as well as the hour that we will be sharing together. Dear Mother, Father God, we ask that you bless us in this moment of encouragement, learning, and trying to alleviate our hearts from the difficulties that we have been facing, whatever that may be, as well as encouraging us to stay true to your guidance, doing the best we can to stay positive, to stay together, and allowing ourselves to grow with the instant at hand. May your guidance, may your light guide the mind and heart of our dear friend, Adriano Barbo, who tonight will conduct the meeting. And may we learn to share with others the teachings that will be enlightening us tonight. We ask protection for each one of us, our minds, our hearts, our homes, our family members, our friends, co-workers, and why not extend this prayer, this moment of enlightenment towards those who are working to take care of those who are sick, who are going through a transition from the physical body back into the spiritual realm. Let us pray for everyone so they can receive this enlightenment, this moment that we calm ourselves down to active listen and find out what's important in our lives. With your guidance, protection, and permission, we ask for your guidance now and ever, and so be it. So, as we were saying earlier, here tonight, well, this afternoon, and then going to the evening, Adriano Barbo will be talking about the Spiritist view of Easter. Our friend Adriano Barbo is, as we like to say, a brother who walks with us, guiding us, persisting with us, and he's one of the founders of the Mount Vernon Spiritist Center in New York. And currently, he coordinates the activities of the center. Adriano has also been giving lectures in several Spiritist centers in the Northeast of the United States, and currently truly applying himself to help others in the great state of New York, who is facing a lot of trouble right now. So why not, as we are listening to him, pray for those who are nearby there in the state of New York who needs much prayer and much persistence in this whole thing. So we would like to also remind you that you can please pose your questions on the chat online when you're following us through YouTube. I'll try to keep track of it. If I don't ask the question, I will be sharing the questions with Daniel so we can ask the question simultaneously at the end. But with no further ado, I would like to pass the word to Adriano right now. Thank you. Go ahead, Adriano.
Thank you, Daniel. Thank you, Leo. That things here in New York isn't been the best, but we are doing well. We see around here people are trying their best. At many homes, we see people coping well with things is that we are uh, seeing around here. And of course, for us as spiritists that throughout the years have studied spiritism, our spiritists are helping us a lot. I have received feedback from spiritist families and friends that are everywhere. They are doing well, and they are trying to be support for those more in need than ourselves. We thank very much the states and our friends from other states that are praying for us in here. And join you all in this afternoon is a pleasure to me. And the project that we are that was proposed to us tonight is to talk about Easter, the spiritual field, but as well as a reflection on the crucifixion and the passion of Jesus, which is led him to crucifixion and resurrection, which of course ended up in the Easter on Sunday. And we our objective for this afternoon is I have chosen some passages of the Passion of Jesus, some steps that is in the Gospels of John, Mark, Luke, and the other one. So we can make a reflections at what happened to him, what was the teachings for us in those modern days. So we're gonna start. I am not here because I'm gonna bring you some of the gospel verses that talks about the Jesus, steps to be, crucified. Some of the steps that is in there, I decided to start with in some place there because we have just 1 hour to discuss a lot of things. So the main point that I would like to bring throughout this excerpts from the gospel is to reflect on them. It's not to bring a historical crucifixion of Jesus. It's not to bring like this is what happened at this day, at this time, at this moment with that or that person. It's not at all because some of the verses that I brought here from John, for example, from Luke, sometimes they happen later or earlier on the week that led to his crucifixion. It's not about historical crucifixion or passion of Jesus. It is about the reflection what did happen to him. That's what I am going to bring to us all tonight. And of course, Easter is very, very profound connected to Passover. Passover, if we just Google for, a couple minutes, we see that, or Passover is much, much older, earlier than Easter, but they are profound, profound connected because the crucifixion of Jesus happened really on the Passover festivities that have been happening for centuries and centuries in Israel. Passover, I just gonna bring a little bit of it in the beginning because of this connections that exists and is very profound to Jesus' crucifixion and the Easter that we Christians today celebrate. The Passover is a celebration of the Israelites, the Hebrew people. Because the Hebrew people, the Israelites, they were captive in Egypt for more than 4 centuries, and we all know the stories of Moses. He was, the one that helped the Israelites to free them to Canaan, the land of Canaan, which is real now. So what happened is, the history tells us that these people were, captive slaves in Egypt for more than 4 centuries. So, and Moses came to free them, and Moses, through the prophet Joseph, gave some warnings to the Egyptians to free them, but they ignored the warnings, and then God sent 10 plagues to Egyptian, so as a threaten for them to give freedom for the Israelites. But for 9 of the 10, they ignored all of them, despite the harm that caused to them. They ignored. So the 10th one was that this plague would kill every in every home they would kill one member of that family, except the houses that was marked by a blood of a lamb, a pure and a blemished lamb. So it happens that the Israelites market their homes. That's the it's what it is in the Old Testament, telling us that they market their homes with the blood of this lamb. So when the plague came, the death came, they see that mark in their homes and they skipped, their home. They passed over their home. That's why there's a celebration of Passover. The death didn't come to their home. They skipped their home because their home was marked by the blood of a pure lamb, and that mark was a cross. And we see here, the connection with Jesus because Jesus is called the pure lamb, the lamb, and we see that the crucifixion of Jesus was a cross. So we see a connection here since that time. So this lamb that were to be, to be, killed and spread the blood there in their homes as a mark for the death not to take any of the people in their home. They choose the best that they could have, and they kept that lamb in their home for a week, for 7 or 8 days prior to the sacrifice of that lamb. So the families of the people they create a bond with that lamb for the days prior to the sacrifice of the lamb. It meant that the day when the lamb was killed, many members of the family already loved that lamb because it was like a pet to them. Although they had to in a way sacrifice the lamb in order for the slavery, and that that over the centuries they repeated this celebration. So you know, we see here already a very, very profound meaning because Jesus stayed with us for 3 years with the disciples, especially with the disciples, for 3 years, consecutive years, and all those people created a very profound bond with Jesus. And at the end of those years, Jesus were sacrificed, were crucified, so for the freedom of ourselves. We're going to discuss a little bit later. So in a way, there's two profound reflection here. One is that the loss, the Passover, and is a celebration in a way of freedom for Israelites from the captivity and the loss as well, because after keeping the lamb for those days, they had to sacrifice it in order to receive freedom. And we all on our every day in our lives we go through losses, loss of loved one to death, loss of job, loss of this or that. We always constantly losing something, except of course we can discuss later the eternal virtues that we acquire every day. So in that way, is the Passover as well. It all to do with detachment of the things and freedom. Why we celebrate freedom? We celebrate freedom because in a way we are captive of something. Otherwise, the word freedom will be meaningless. The word freedom exists because there is something that keeps us from it. And in a way, we are free of something. We celebrate freedom of anything is because we are captive of anything. A captive as a slave physically, we captive as a slave mentally, emotionally, and morally. So what Jesus came to us for? Of course, he came to give us freedom, freedom of the slavery of moral vices that we were so much attached to and enslaved by. So here, we're gonna explain a little more towards the end, for which we have time about it. So, and then when Jesus was crucified, was really on the time where the Jewish people of the time, the Israelites, they celebrate Passover. Why Jesus have chosen that time to be crucified? So it's because, of course, there is a profound link between the festivities and his death, of course, because his death was, of course, predicted, long before through the prophets Jeremiah, Isaiah, and many others. So here, talking about the passion of Jesus, I chosen to start somewhere, and I chose to start right here. I'm gonna explain you why. I'm gonna bring you this slide here, and I'm gonna read it for you, so I can explain you why I started here. Get my glass here. This passage is in Matthew 21:21. Jesus replied, "Truly I tell you, if you have faith and do not doubt, not only can you do what I was done to the fig tree, but also you can say to this mountain, 'Go, throw yourself into the sea,' and it will be done." Why I have chosen this passage here? This passage happened in the Passover week, in the week that always started for the crucifixion of Jesus. Jesus, at this moment here, he was going to Jerusalem, and he was passing by this fig tree, and he came to the fig tree, and it wasn't the season for the fruit of the season of the fig tree. And Jesus looked around. There was a beautiful tree, a fig tree, full of leaves and beautiful outside, but has no fig at all. Of course, it wasn't the season for it. And Jesus cursed, the fig tree, and later on they passed by again, and the fig tree had died. And Jesus, said that this was a bad fig tree because it didn't have the fig, and said to the disciples if they had the faith, um, of you have faith and do not doubt, you can do marvelous thing as to say to the fig tree to cast in the sea. Why Jesus had chosen the fig tree in the moment that in the season that has nothing to do with the fig to the fruit itself? Many people has different explanation for that, but one that we have chosen is that in nature, the trees has a law, really a law to obey. There's a season for the to bloom, for the flowers, and there's a season for the fruits, and they obey it exactly as it goes because they don't have free will yet. They're just a tree, and they are not required to give they are not expected not required to give fruit before its time, but it is not the same with us. With that message, Jesus said you get to be prepared because you may have to give your fruit before you less expect. The disciples had no idea that Jesus in a few days later will be crucified. You'll be persecuted, will be judged, will be arrested, and they would go through a very difficult time. They had no idea of that. But Jesus, and they, of course, they were not prepared, truly prepared for that, as the happenings later shows us. They gone through it, but they weren't that 100% prepared. So it means to us that there is a lot of things that will happen to us if we are not prepared for it. We may not have the strength or the fruit for its time. So for us, it's different. Like we could like bring a little bit of the time that we live in now, the coronavirus. Nobody would expect that. Nobody would expect that we have to give so much at this moment. The government would not expect to give so much of the money, of the interests, and the doctors would not expect to work so much. We didn't expect to stay so much at home, and so forth. And but although we had to, we are not a tree. If we were a tree, we would give you nothing. But we are humans, and in a way, we have to be prepared. And Jesus told more to them. You have faith. If you have faith, you can go over and do anything. Jesus was at this moment start preparing the disciples for what was to come. And that was the first thing that I would bring to us. And the second one is the Last Supper, of course. That's why it calls the Last Supper. It's a little bit of it is when Jesus said this the commandment, the command in John 13:34, when it said a new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love love one another. So Jesus were one day prior to be crucified here on Thursday, and he gathered all the disciples, and it was in this meeting, in this dinner, in this supper that Jesus announced to them this command, and had told them that was the basically the goodbye. And of course was in that day that Jesus told that one of them would betray him. There would be of course Jude that later on betrayed him and gave him away for the Pharisee to be crucified. So in that moment Jesus were preparing, was the last lesson for the group, for the disciples. Throughout the years prior to that moment, Jesus were with them. Jesus were in a way babysitting them all the way. They had something, they came to Jesus and they asked for clarification. If they had any argument between themselves, Jesus came in between them and pacified the moment. And they were all the time watching Jesus perform his work. And Jesus was babysitting them all the time. But Jesus knew that from that moment on, they would be in a way by themselves. Of course, not by themselves, because Jesus will be in spirit with them after the crucifixion. However, Jesus weren't there all the time to babysit them, tell them this or that, exemplifying in the day-to-day life. So Jesus, prior there, were with them. And in that moment, Jesus had to give something else for them because Jesus knew that there were a group of people. They had their difficulties, and in some way they were not perfect. So why Jesus, instead of telling them, repeating them their old teachings about forgiving the enemies, yeah, being patient and so forth, didn't repeat that. Why he gave a new commandment? Because Jesus gave this commandment for the disciples among themselves. If they should love one another to strengthen them, because in the moments ahead of there, they needed to be a group. They would have to support one another if they really wanted to succeed in their mission, especially in the beginning where the tough times came to them. So and then we saw, of course, throughout the discipleships, the times in which the apostles worked throughout the years to come. They had to support one another. They had they had to love really one another as a team to perform the mission that they had come for. So in the way, Jesus had to love one another. And this is a profound lesson to us. We are, on earth, and we're gonna need one another, and we're just gonna help each other in some way if we love one another. There's no way you're gonna help, one another if you don't like each other. Why there is so much, even we have been a stranger, because there is a good feeling about each other. The more we love, the more we support each other. And for, of course, for the spiritist, or for disciples, the new disciples of Jesus, which can be a person, any person today that put in this position, there is this is the most important command. That's the most important principle that we should keep in mind in order to overcome the difficult times that we face ahead of us. And Jesus gave to the disciples, of course. That's why they succeed in there. And I brought, and now we fend ahead a little towards the crucifixion of Jesus here. And I brought another one here. I'm gonna explain you why I brought this one here. This is one's in Luke. Um, eh, Jesus went to the Gethsemane for prayer, and an angel from heaven appeared to him and strengthened him. And the other passage here, I'm gonna read all them and explain all them together so it makes sense for you all. This one's in the Matthew, of course, the second in Matthew 26:42. He went away a second time and prayed, "My Father, if it is not possible for this cup to be taken away, unless I drink it, may your will be done. May your will be done." Then he returned to the disciples and said to them, "Are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the hour has come, and the Son of Man is delivered to the hands of the sinners." This is the moment. I would say a couple of maybe an hour or so before he was handed over to be to the to the soldiers of the Sanhedrin that came to pick him up and bring him over to be judged and crucified. Jesus went to get to the Gethsemane for to pray, and he brought with him two disciples, Peter and I guess Peter and John, Peter and Andrew. I'm not really sure. And he went a little further in where the disciples could see him. And Jesus were there praying and say, "Stay here, and I'll go and pray. Stay and watch." And then when Jesus came back, they were sleeping. And in the two times that Jesus came back, they were sleeping. And Jesus were there praying. What Jesus were, was in the content of the prayer of Jesus. An angel from heaven, an angel, a pure spirit came to strengthen Jesus. And Jesus told to God, if it is possible, you can take away my cup, which will be his crucifixion. However, if it for your will, I will drink the cup. For the will of God, I go through it. Jesus, he in this moment first, there is this cooperation even among the higher hierarchy spirits. Jesus was a pure spirit, a Christ. He was incarnated. He was going in this moment the hardest time of his life, not only because physically, but of the betrayal, of the emotional contents, and everything that happened in those days. And imagine that an angel or another pure spirit came to strengthen him, to give him support. Then we see here, even the higher spirit like Jesus, he needed support, and still he needed support. He governs the earth. However, there is thousands and thousands of another spirits helping him. And there's this infinite hierarchy of the spirit going forth and back doing his commands. So he was strengthened by an angel. What is the lesson for us here? We sometimes we know the struggles that we will to face ahead of us. What we do? Jesus prayed before. He advised he advised the disciples. He gave commands. He organized what to do, what's the best to do, and he strengthened himself for the struggle. Although he was a pure spirit, a Christ, the most powerful man on earth at the time, he, in a way, asked for help, for support. If Jesus did that, who are we not to, strengthen ourselves through the support of a good spirit, a friend, through a prayer? That's why, Jesus succeeded so well in his mission. He was perfect in all his, behavior. And that's why sometimes we fail so much because, sometimes instead of before or prior to facing something difficult, we don't pray. We don't like look for God's help or friends' help. We think that we are the best. So it's not the good option. Here, whatever, we have to pray always because we always weak and we never know what's coming ahead of us, tomorrow after tomorrow. In that way, we have to watch always. So Jesus, although he was strong and perfect, he prayed and he received from God the help that he needed, the support that he needed. And of course, he brought the disciples, with him that they could learn and ask them to watch. It is a very, in a way, Jesus would say, this is a very difficult time now. I'm gonna face something very difficult, and you two are about to enter the phase of your life in which you have to give everything that you can get. And imagine in this very important moment, the disciples were sleeping there. They couldn't stay like a couple of hours watching and praying with Jesus there. They were sleeping. It is the message that this is the that we take here is that sometimes in the moments that we are most in need, we is the time that we rest, is the time when we sleep, that we show no proactive, we show no work at all. And of course this is very negative for us, like for example, in the time that we're going through now, is the time that we watch, is the time that we are proactive, is the time that we pray. It's not the time that we relax and whatever happens. No, of course not. It is a very grave time, and we have a tremendous responsibility in the coming of everything that we going passing through during our life. And in this moment is very, very great. So let us not sleep. Let us not forget what we have learned through the years that passed. Like Jesus was like telling, remember, I've been with you for many years. Now is a great time. It's time for you to act on what you have learned. However, they they were sleeping, and then we see some of the 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 fails that came ahead. Paul, not Paul, Peter, denied Jesus 3 times. It's one of the things. All the disciples, in a way, they ran away in the beginning. They were not supporting Jesus as some of the women that went ahead to the crucifixion of Jesus. There is just an if here, but you know, if they had prayed with Jesus, if they were much more aware of the situation, profoundly more connected to the mission of Jesus, maybe they wouldn't have ran away as had have done in the beginning. Maybe they wouldn't have denied Jesus, Peter, for example. However, those things happen to them as a lesson to us as well. Some of our failures that we can be prevented um, if we are more aware of the great moments of our lives and be more watchful ahead of us what to come and be more prepared. I'm gonna put another slide here for you, and I'm gonna explain it to you. And then came the moment in which Jesus said to them in Matthew 26:46, chapter 46, verses 46. Right, let's go. Here comes my betrayer. That's when Jesus were delivered to the soldiers to bring over to be judged. And there's all the passage here that we're going to explain both all together. This is in John 18:17. You aren't one of these men. I'm sorry. This is another passage, but I'm going to explain all together. This happens to Peter when Peter denied Jesus. You aren't one of these men's disciples, too, are you? She asked Peter. He replied, I am not. Here is two negative things altogether. Of course, one is more complicated, which is the moment where Jesus were delivered for the soldiers in this evening, where Jude he betrayed Jesus with a kiss. Was a sign in which this disciple had made arrangement with the people in the Sanhedrin to identify Jesus, and he approached Jesus and kissed him, and then the soldiers came, the centurions, and arrested Jesus. And Jesus said, I didn't put in here. I should have. It's when Jesus said, "What you come for, friend?" He betrayed Jesus with a kiss, And even Emmanuel comments this in one of his books, I guess, is Living Spring. And Jesus still calls him as a friend. So, one of the lessons that I take from here is that a kiss usually is a sign of friendship, right? It's a good sign. However, in this moment, it wasn't a good sign at all. It was a sign of a betrayal. It was a sign in which a friend was betraying another friend. Sometimes we can't take the exterior, you know, as a proof of something. We see here that's all that goes inside in the spirit, in the heart, that all that matters most. A kiss can be a betrayal, and a good sign of exterior body language that we sometimes judge as a good thing can be, some bad thing, as the kiss of the that disciple that came to betray Jesus and landed him to those men. And Jesus is not here, but Jesus told them, "Why you come now?" Because there was an evening, it was dark. And let us remember that a couple of days ago, in the beginning of the week, Jesus went to Jerusalem, to the temple, and he expelled the businessmen out of there. They were selling, the animals. They were making that temple as a business place. And Jesus expelled all them there and said, this is not a place for business. This is a God's place. It's a sacred place. Why are you here? There was a big mess there, and all the authorities were there, and they didn't arrest Jesus there because it was daylight, it was in the middle of the people. Why they came to Jesus in dark? Dark forces always operate in darkness, in cowardice. They never face light because they know that light is stronger. Light is powerful. Darkness can't ever overcome light, but darkness overcomes, when in darkness, that they have more power, and that's when they operate. Whenever there is a bad thing is operating darkness, good thing never happens in light. I'm not, of course, here talking about, in terms of physical light. However, just ask them, why I were with you this week, the whole week during the days with other festivities in the temple, and you didn't arrest me. Why now? Of course, there were a conspiration. They had no ground for their arrest. In that way, they had to do it behind, the scenes to make their case work. And of course, after the arrest of Jesus, he was brought to the Sanhedrin, to the court, to be judged by Caiaphas and for the Pilates and many others. There are many figures here. I won't bring all them because there's few of them, and Jesus went back and forth to Pilates, to Caiaphas, to the other king, and one said this, another said that. I'm just gonna bring here another slide later that there is one of the answers of Jesus gave, and then I will summarize all together because our time, is not much to explain the whole thing. And in here, when Jesus were arrested, and it was brought to the temple, and and there were when this passerby, this woman saw Peter, and then invited him as a disciple of Jesus, and then he, of course, in this moment, he denied not knowing Jesus. And that's one of the moments. It is a profound, of course, for us. What's the lesson for us? We don't have much time for that, but you know, we accept the Christ teachings as a spiritist or other kind of Christians. Protestant, Catholics, and any other denomination. We accept Christ, and we accept that we walk with Him and do whatever it takes to to put in practice and face the consequences. However, sometimes in some moments we deny Jesus in many occasions when we most needed to sometimes to enforce his teachings. as our moral conduct is when we are weak. We let corruption take over us in some way by thought or by actions. There's the moment that we, should forgive to make sure, to confirm that we're Christian, and then we deny it by not forgiving. So there's many ways that we deny Jesus today, and there's even some others that are afraid to say even that they are spiritist, even that they are Christian, depending on the gathering or the occasion that they are. I know people. I have seen people. I have heard people deny to be spiritist in a gathering that were not so welcome when we say that we're spiritist. So those are kind of examples that happen not only to Peter, but it can happen to others. So this is, let us remember that this was happening during the Passion, in the moments in which these were judged. And here, Jesus with the authority, there was a trial, Two, there's many books studying the trial. It's kind of beautiful. One of the books that it is very interesting if you want to read. It's although it's in Portuguese, but it's called Sou Eu by Divaldo Franco and Amélia Rodrigues. They made a compilation of the Passion of Jesus. Every step of the way that Jesus was going to be crucified, there were the communication of Amélia Rodrigues, and there were analysis, bring historical facts and everything to it. And there is another book here. I'm sorry, you're gonna go out a little bit of the camera here. But there's another book here called from Da Manjedoura a Emmaus. It's from Wesley Caldeira. It's a very beautiful book as well. He comments on the crucifixion of Jesus and bring a lot of historical facts. And there is another book here. It's not a spiritist book, but gives you an idea. And of course, there's the author point of view. But for a spiritist, you can filter this information by Bill Ray that called Killing Jesus. He goes step by step, explain historical facts, Roman laws, and everything. So we can get that. And if you are a spiritist, you're gonna see and you're gonna be able to make sense of the whole thing and be so emotional of this trial. I by myself, I have studied a lot about it, and to tell you the truth, every time that I go through this topic, through the passion, I am very emotional. I'm in some way I feel a pain in my chest, and it's very difficult. One of the most difficult topics for me to study is the passion of Jesus, and at the same time brings a lot of lessons. So in a way, here I'm gonna bring just a little bit this the point, general point that I want to bring for us as a lesson for our week to come and for our life. Jesus and the authorities. This part here is in John 18:36. Chapter 18, verses 36. Jesus said, "My kingdom is not from this world. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is oh sorry, I was sorry, I just I'm gonna come back here. One moment, please. I missed here my kingdom is not from this world. I'm sorry, I'm gonna repeat here. If it were, my servants would fight to prevent my arrest by the Jewish leaders. But now my kingdom is from another world. And the other passage here is from John 19, chapter 19, verses 5 and 6. When Jesus came out wearing the crown of thorns and the purple robe, Pilate said to him, "He is the man." As soon as the chief priests and their officials saw him, they shouted, "Crucify, crucify." But Pilate announced, "You take him and crucify him. As for me, I find no basis for the charge against him." So that is the apex of the trial. Jesus was coming back and forth, pushing back and forth because no one except the Jewish leaders want to crucify him. Pilate was afraid to crucify him, and Pilate sent him to the other king, which put the crown of thorns in his head to, in a way, find the basis for the charge against Jesus. But he, as much, didn't want to get involved. In a way, everyone was afraid to crucify Jesus and condemn him. There's a lot of things in this moment here, but we haven't time. The leaders were trying to convince Pilate that Jesus were against the Roman and said that he was king. And that's why Jesus said, I am a king. My kingdom is not from this world. And that's why Pilate had no foundation for his charge because, Jesus was saying, no, my king is not the Roman king. He's not any king of this earth. So in a way, Pilate had no foundation. Nothing that Jesus answered Pilate were something that he could use against against them. So what thought Pilate? He had no courage to absolve, to acquit Jesus from the trial. He knew that Jesus were innocent. And in a way, he wanted to acquit Jesus from the trial, from the accusation, and then him free. However, he was a politician and he was afraid to lose, his status with the Jewish leaders and so forth. In a way, he said, I don't find any foundation for the trial. However, go you and crucified him. He, in a way, were like, as he washed his hands and said, you do it, I don't do it. Of course, there's a lot of in here. Amelia Rodriguez, especially Amelia Rodriguez, comments on this passage, talking about the character of Pilate. Pilate was a very, very bad man. He was rude, cruel, um, and in the Bible, his figure were portrayed a little better. All the historical things about Pilate were really bad, but in the Bible, he was a kind of a little better. The historical people say that because the apostles portrayed him a little better, so the Romans were more acceptable of the teachings of Jesus. There's a lot of comments on why he were in a way, kind of tending to like Jesus and let him go. And Amelia Rodriguez tells that although he was really a bad man and he was cruel, he was in front of the greatest spirit that ever came to earth. Even his full senses and heart were in a way lessened by the love of Jesus, by the presence of Jesus. And in that moment, he was really portraying, although of a couple of moments, he was portraying to be a better man. So in the moment here, Pilate not finding the basis for the trial, though accepting the pressure of the population in front of the court, he gave Jesus to be crucified, to brought up to the mountain of Golgotha to be killed there and crucified. There's a lot of things in here saying that the authorities bribed the population to pressure them to crucify Jesus. We have no time for this today, but and then here we have the crucifixion of Jesus. I'm gonna read here and I'm gonna summarize his coming to the mountain and resurrection. This is in Luke 23:34. Jesus said, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." And they divided up his clothes by casting lots. This is in John 19:26-27. When Jesus saw his mother there and the disciple whom he loved, um, When he loved standing nearby, he said to her, "Woman, there is your son." And to the disciple, he said, "He is your mother." From that time on, this disciple took her into his home. So this is the one of the last moments that Jesus had. The last words of Jesus were to us, to the people that crucified him. Jesus, asked our Creator, asked God to forgive us because we didn't know what we were doing. It was, uh, from the court to the cross were like a long pathway. He was very weak and he fell down many times because the wood that he carried, in his arms were heavy, and he fell down many times. He said that the woman, especially they say that's Veronica, the woman that he cured from the blood hemorrhage, in one of his passage came and gave him a wet towel to wash his face, and then there was the other man that helped him when he carried his cross a little bit so he'd rest from Syrian. Um, so there's a lot of lessons in the moment when Jesus was carrying the cross. We have no time for it, but this is if we go step by step, every personage, every person that participated in it, every moment, we see that it have to do with us a lot, and then we can get a lot of lesson there. But the biggest lesson here is that after all he gone through, he had, the extreme strength to forgive. He lamented nothing. He complained nothing. He accepted his fate. He were obeying God's will, and he was submitting. He was the greatest and is the greatest spirit on earth yet that we can recognize and ever have to see for the future in the back. And yet he was accepting one of the greatest and not the greatest, the worst punishment ever, because crucifixion was given to the worst criminals ever. Was the objection of the objection. It was something very, very, very bad gave to criminals of the worst on the earth. So imagine giving that kind of punishment and death for the greatest man ever, and yet he had the courage to and the strength to forgive the perpetrators, the persecuted, and he was abandoned there. Were only John, the beloved disciple, and of course Mary, his mother, and the other Mary, Magdalene, and the other women were surrounding him. It is a great point for the women because we see throughout the journey of Jesus, he loved the woman a lot and he respected and he gave chances to them because of the time, women had less respect and less value than a slave. The word of a woman at the time were less than a word of a slave. It was like an animal. Imagine Jesus were there to uplift them and giving them chance. And imagine by being support for them, they were for Jesus as well, surrounding and supporting him in this great moment. It's a big point for the woman. And still today, we see women ahead of many circumstances. We see many spiritual, for example, there's more women on the work than men. I don't want to, put sides here, but we see that women sometimes in a way. And last year, my time is over, but I'm gonna get 5 minutes more here, I guess. It's allowed, right? Uh, then we can summarize the Easter here. I promise that I can summarize in 5 minutes here. And then this is the resurrection of Jesus. When Jesus, when he was died in the cross, and then came Joseph, and took his body. He had the permission, and he buried him in the cemetery there in a tomb that belonged to Joseph. And the other day, Mary Magdalene went there, to check up on the tomb and bring perfume and to offer to Jesus there in the tomb. And then what this passage is all about. You can read there. We're gonna read here so we can all go together and summarize the whole thing together. Jesus appeared to Mary Magdalene. Now Mary stood outside the tomb crying as she wept. She bent over to look into the tomb and saw two angels in white seated where Jesus' body had been. One once once one at the head and one the other at the foot. They asked her, "Woman, why are you crying?" "They have taken my Lord away," she said, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this, she turned around and saw Jesus standing there, but she did not realize that it was Jesus. He said, he asked her, "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he was the gardener, she said, "Sir, if you have carried carried him away, tell me tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Jesus said to her, "Mary." She turned towards him and cried out in Aramaic, "Rabban, Habib," which means a teacher or wise man. Jesus said, "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father. Go, go instead to my brothers and tell them I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." Mary Magdalene went to the disciples with the news, "I have seen the Lord," and and she told them that he had said these things to her. So that's the moment where Jesus was the first to appear after his death. There was the resurrection. Just a little bit of the explanation here like in a couple of seconds about resurrection. Resurrection for the Jewish people, it was taken different ways. Some of them believed that the resurrection meant when the end of times, the Spirit will come and his old body was there before would get together and he would be judged. Some other people had had the idea that of the reincarnation, and some other people believed that was a psychic phenomenon in which there was the apparition, only the apparition of the dead, not that he physicalized, materialized there and took another body. So there's many this is the main three beliefs about resurrection. And for us, of course, resurrection mean more to the it is the psychic one, which is Jesus didn't get his old body back. His old body was were killed, were dead, and he appeared in his spirit, his very spirit, and in his spirit was a psychic vision, was a physical phenomena, the resurrection. So for us, resurrection is not taking the old body back. It means a psychic phenomenon. It's a mediumistic phenomenon in when the spirit comes back and it's seen. We see here, for example, in the beginning, Mary Magdalene didn't know that was Jesus because he appeared to her in the beginning in one way and then the other. If we see Jesus appeared many other times for the disciples later on. He appeared for them where they would get together first, and then to the two disciples to Emmaus, like uh, dozens of times, Jesus had the apparition, and every time, in a way, he appeared physically, looking in one way or another. It means that Jesus had the power to change his appearance. It means that Jesus had not taken his old body and were using it. What is dead is dead. What is life, of course, is life. So this is resurrection means to us. And that's the moment, Mary Magdalene. Imagine here again, Jesus was giving a point for the woman. That woman were in the beginning of his mission. She was a sinner. He was like this woman, desperate for forgiveness and for a restart. And Jesus embraced her and helped her throughout his time on earth. And now he was giving her, the first to see him and see, we have no time for it, but as I said before, women at that time had no authority, no respect at all, and their word has no value at all. So, and Jesus appeared to her and said, "Go there and say to the disciples." Imagine, of course, Jesus knew that her word wouldn't be much to the disciple, and the disciple didn't believe her. There is, of course, something behind it here. But Jesus is always choosing the weaker to help, to trust, to be. Jesus was aside, he was helping always the ones in need most. Even when he was after his suffering and his given to death, he was choosing the weakest ones. So the whole message here that we celebrate today, not today, not tomorrow, the Easter, was in connection with the Passover, is the freedom, is the renewal. That after the suffering, Jesus went through his trial, through his crucifixion, all he had gone through, and he ascended to heaven, to his place, his rightful place. And this, we have our journey. When we celebrate um, Easter, is that we are celebrating our renewal, our overcoming of the obstacles that we face in life. It's not about chocolate, not about eggs, all those commercial things that start long ago. We have no time for it. Is a spiritual, a spiritual celebration. It's a journey that we repeat over and over until we are total total free. Every moment that we overcome a vice, a bad tendency, we are renewing and we are freer and freer. That's why every reincarnation is a step towards freedom, and we acquire that freedom all the time. So it means that we, in a way, if we stop to celebrate Easter tomorrow, let us see throughout the back year what we had achieved. Are we more freer than before? And if we are not, what is enslaving us? And the final Easter to us, or the final Passover to us, is when we will, in the future times, be total free from reincarnating because we are in debt with the laws. We have to repair, to rectify, to expiate. That will be the total celebration. Jesus had his total celebration, of course. So in a way, we are not able yet to celebrate the total freedom. We have to celebrate every year a little bit more. Every incarnation we celebrate a little more. So let us take the Jesus lesson. What we have to do to celebrate our freedom from the captivity. If we take the Jesus steps, at least some of his steps, we sure to succeed. We sure to celebrate it genuinely inside of our souls every year, every week, and every reincarnation. The less we put in price the Jesus teachings, the less we, the more we'll be enslaved, the more our freedom will be cut off. So I hope we celebrate it more and more, and tomorrow we have a real meaning for it. Tomorrow, or other days of our life, we say to ourselves, yes, although I am not total free, I have achieved throughout this year freedom of sort of this or sort of that. And then the joy of renewal, the joy of resurrection come of the dead in a way, it will take over our souls. And I hope we all had that through this year. And of course, the year ahead of us will offer us a lot that we have learned with Jesus. I invite you all to go through the Passion of Jesus, crucifixion, and reading about the Easter and Passover. You will see points there that will help you a lot, will serve you as a tool or to strengthen yourselves, get better, a lot of good things then, and spiritual tools in there. Um, I would like to say more things, but I had taken more than I needed in time, I guess. Leo is there already, like, oh, when are you going to stop? Thank you, Leo, and thank you, everybody. I'm sorry for taking more time than was like expected.
No, it's perfectly fine. We can go on and on and on.
There's another slide. Yeah, I'm sorry, but it's just that we can all read all together. It says that Jesus. This is not about. It's not in the Passion, but Jesus said, that he would stay to us to the end of times. Although he had suffered and he departed physically, he will be with us eternally until we achieve our own resurrection, our own freedom. He was free, although he will not abandon us on earth. And let us make sure that he is with us every day, that he promised and he kept and will keep his promise forever.
Great, thank you, Adriano, for this enlightening message. It's interesting how you brought these passages from the Bible, so we can get into the the context of what was happening at the moment, days before, the doing, and the after as well, and giving the highlights as well in terms of the how Jesus appears, right, in the beliefs at the time, in terms of the resurrection, that it was believed, and there still is still a belief behind it, and how Spiritism brings that to us. There are a couple comments and there are some questions as well that we would like to share with you from the web that I have received from some of our friends as well, through WhatsApp. I would like to start with one question. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is actually coming from Kirsten, or was it just a comment? My question is do we have to announce to others that we are spiritists? Isn't it more important to live the teachings more than anything? Or are we referring to when someone asks us?
Well, my opinion is that we don't have to. Most of the time, as with this discussion comes a lot of times in spiritual center, In my life, I experienced that the very few times I have, it's very important to say. I believe, and Jesus tells us it's more important that show by example that, what we really are, or which Spirit teaches us. Although, of course, there is few moments that is very important to say. I have experience in my life in which I had to say that I was a spirit, and then it was very important, not to me, of course, but for the people around me. The, that I had to announce. I am a spiritist, and the spiritist teach me this and that. And of course, the most important thing is the example, no doubt at all. Although there is times in which applies to say and announce, I'm a spiritist, and of course, yeah, we're gonna find a good. We're gonna recognize these moments, and of course, if we give example all the time, even though sometimes when it needed to say that we spiritist, we don't say. If we give the example, it's more than enough.
Awesome. Yes, it is important for us to remember, as you're saying, the importance, right? At times we believe that we have to say this, we have to say that, but we also have to analyze the moment. When is the right the moment to say, and the right things to say as well. So we're not putting ourselves in a position where we show ourselves to be bigger, not that, which is not our intention, or know any more than others, but truly to accommodate people the best way possible. One
Yeah.
one comment and one question, I believe, from Yas Guaracaba. She says, Adriano, thank you for the great material. And then she says, taking the sacrifice of a lamb as a symbol of what the family cherished most and should give away in order to get freedom once a year, every Passover, how to make a parallel with the struggles in my life today. To get peace of mind, for instance, what should I give up? What I cherish most and that is stealing my peace of mind? Power, money, control over people, our children, etc. Please comment on it or other parallel.
Well, I guess if we are truly honest to ourselves, which is something that we are learning every day in our lives, if we truly stop and breathe deeply and bring Jesus to us, we're gonna recognize what we should do. Truly, our conscience, our heart will tell us if we truly do that. Sometimes we don't recognize those because we are distracted. We don't want really to stop, reflect, and accept that inner voice that tells you, Adriano, for you to achieve that, you should give up this. Could be something material and could be something emotional. Somebody that I'm truly attached to them or to her or to him that is not helpful can be even there's a lot of things in life that we are attached to. Can be a small thing, a book, for example, a computer, or a big thing. But everyone, so it's very difficult to make parallels because everyone has different experience and different attachments and different point of views, but everyone has their inner voice that never lies to them, in despite of their knowledge of more or less. That same voice, if they are truly honest with themselves and connect with the higher energies, to God and to the good spirits, they will, of course, know what to do. And then it's up for them, or up to us, after listen to this voice, take charge. I'm gonna do it because I know what to do. However, sometimes I'm not so sure, and a lot of after excuse that we Uh, I'm not sure if I answered it, but the way that's the way I think it works for me.
No, good, thank you. There are a couple of comments that I'd like to make here. That it was Kirsten brought one, and Paula also, and then we go into a question.
Mhm.
Um, it says, Kirsten says, I feel like this story of Jesus and his disciples sleeping while important things were happening is analogous to what is happening every day with humanity. We are sleeping. While Jesus is calling us to serve, but we choose other things, such as sleep. So that's one comment.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's very good. Yeah.
and then the other comment that I would like to bring as well is from Paula Smith, that when she says she would like to share with you that I too shared his discomfort with the passion due to our highly sensitive natures, now understood as emphasis, or like you. And then there is one final comment, well, not final, but that the Alba also brought to us here. Um, let's see here. Do you know? This is actually a question. I'm sorry. She says that she has a comment and then she has a question. I also have difficult with the topic of passion. My heart aches with the story. And then the question is, do you know what was the role of Mary Magdalene in the spreading of the gospel after Jesus left to the spirit world?
Not much. There's this, those new gospels that they find. That's more information about her, but there's no proof at all. Is genuine, which is from really her. That's most information that historically contains about it. And in the Spiritist books, I never read much about her rule in the spreading of the gospel. We know through the Spirit that you know, she went to live with the lepers in the valley of the lepers. After Jesus' death, and helped them and talked about the gospel to them. That's all I know. No much.
Gotcha. Thank you. There's also a comment from Kirsten. Great reminder, Adriano. It's not about the commercialization of Easter. It's about remembering Christ, and that is a great point, Kirsten, that you bring. Not only for this holiday, for this moment of the year, but many other of the religious um, moments of the year. You know, Christmas and other ones as well, that we tend to commercialize everything, right? To make an extra buck on top of these moments when we truly are to be reminding the teachings of it. And not beyond
Yes,
it.
just to comment that is it's like when we do commercialize this, it's like the businessman in the temple.
Hmm.
Although there's not physical temple, it is a spiritual temple. When we commercialize this commemoration, which we should be celebrating it spiritually, and we commercialize it, it's like we bring in, as in the time of Jesus. I guess for me, it's kind of the same.
Right, right. One other question here from Yasko. The way, and I'm trying to say the way that she say it here, so you understand. And I am trying to understand as well. The way, uh, the way in the day Jesus would be crucified was set from the beginning, way before he came. What is the significance, excuse me, of this time of Passover be chosen? The martyrdom or the resurrection or both? I think I missed. That's what she asked.
Well, Jesus chose this time, of course, because there's a connection. Was if we read the scriptures and the Old Testament and the history of this highlights the prophets, prophetizing his coming, his death. There was all connected to the Passover. So in order to fulfill the prophet, it had to do in this time. Of course, Jesus could have chosen any other time because he was in command. He was to choose that. It wasn't, if we read it, we see that Jesus have chosen every moment. He was in charge of everything. He could have chosen other time, even no celebration at all.
Right.
But he had to do that way to fulfill the prophecy. That it was kind of a sign that he was the Christ, he was the Messiah, and all this celebration was like proof in that. Well, that was one point, and then of course the other point is spiritually, as we said.
Adriano, I'd like to make a comment on this that you just
Hmm.
said, because in connect with one of the first questions that we asked in terms of how we should approach other people, how we should approach who we are or who we will not, or what we go for. I think that Christ, with the information that you brought tonight to us, it's very clear that he chose every moment or every situation to bring something more enlightened to us. He utilized it of a holiday, telling them that he would like to be with them, to spend time with them. But before that even happened, he was guiding them, saying, "Look, watch, pray. This may happen. This will happen to us. This will come to between us." So there was all these different highlights that he brought, utilizing every moment, every situation, the environment that it was in, as well as the individuals that was around him, to teach something and to leave something meaningful behind. So I think what you just brought also highlights this as well, that everything had made a purpose beyond that we can think. As we dive into the gospel, we will look for the teachings, but we will see that let's make this meaningful, right? Let's make this moment uh, purposeful for us to grow in different ways. So that is my comment on it. So thank you. I'm looking to see if anybody has anything else to say here. If not, we'll go ahead and continue and finalize this amazing gathering that we had here online in a different way, but definitely a really true moment for all of us to utilize and put into perspective where we are right now in this whole scheme of things, as well as how we can grow tomorrow in our smaller gatherings, because we're not going to be able to expose ourselves with larger group of people. For those of us who can do that, who still do that based on our beliefs, um, but to truly to stop, reflect, and go back to these teachings that Adriano brought here with us tonight. Um, and we would like to really, Adriano, give you a huge thanks for taking time to share these passages with us, this topic with us, bringing enlightenment to all of us. And we're sending our good vibrations to the state of New York, the city of New York,
Hmm.
and the different counties, the different houses as well. We are certainly in need of much prayer, in not only for us but for all the states that are going through the crisis right now. The people who are suffering. It's easier for us who are in the um, warmth of our homes, and thank God, or we're still okay. But we have to put in perspective as well those who have family members at the hospital, family members who are sick, and truly bring awareness of the eternity of the spirit, that the body will perish and will continue. It's not easy, but certainly it is a comfort for many of us who are in need right now. So thank you for your time. There's no more comments, and we would like to continue with our prayer tonight, and wishing everyone farewell until we meet again for the next meetings. So I would like to invite everyone for a quick reminder, and then we will pray together. Our homes are our little piece of the SSB right now, or of the Spiritist Center, of what we can bring, what we have learned from the past. So it's imperative that we truly connect with the message, we truly connect with the ideals, and we move on to sharing this moment, bringing truly this moment to our home. So follow us in this moment of prayer. Dear Master Jesus, we are thankful for this amazing reminder that we received tonight. We give you thanks for the opportunity that we have to have our friend, brother Adriano Barbo with us again, asking that you please guide our minds and our hearts wherever we may be, to sacrifice what is needed from our lives, dissipating from our minds and our hearts any distraction, anything that will hold us down as an old man fighting with ourselves, allowing us to move on into new endeavors, starting new habits, new works of love and kindness towards others, helping not only ourselves, but our brothers and sisters. Asking ourselves in each moment of our lives, what is the best way to propagate love and kindness? Not only by spreading the Spiritist teachings, but through good examples, showing our brothers and sisters how kind and how generous we can be, understanding our shortcomings and allowing ourselves to understand the shortcomings of others, reminding ourselves that we are not perfect and that others are not perfect either. But through the encouragement that we are all running towards the same finish line, happiness, that we can help one another. May tonight be a point of light for all of us. May your teachings guide our minds and hearts. And may the decisions being made by each one of us, individually and collectively, be of positiveness, be of kindness, encouragement, to go through these moments together and serenely. We are thankful, dear Lord, and so be it. So there were some other comments as well, Adriano, that came through. We have Barbara saying, very good talk. May us all reflect on our crosses, path, and enlightenments. Antonia Carter also mentioned, thank you, Adriano. It was a great reminder of true meaning of Easter. And Marisa de Mello as well said, beautiful. And it was, in fact, a really good reminder for all of us. And we are thankful again for all of this. Thankful for all of those who are following us online. And this beautiful work that we put together online temporarily, hopefully soon,
I
together
hope
in
so.
person,
Yeah.
and soon bringing again Adriano here personally, so we can give him a big hug, physical hug, and physical hug for everyone as well. So thank you, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Adriano.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much. God bless you all.